Well, good morning. Want to welcome you all to this power session this morning. We are talking about living proactively today. So I want to give my thanks out to the Portsmouth, Ohio Chamber of Commerce, the Maysville, Kentucky Chamber, the Grayson, Kentucky Chamber, the Adams County, Ohio Chamber, and the Ashland Alliance. They notify their membership and invite them to come to these as an added value to their membership. And we appreciate their support and them putting forth, generating an interest for these topics. And today we're talking about learning to live owning your choices, the stability of living that way, and how to do that. Very simple, very practical, but I think transformational for sure. So, again, this is the series we're doing in 2024, 12 transforming 30-minute online events. We're on event number 5, living proactively. We've done optimistically, living in respect, integrity, living in the present. All of those are available on my website. The links to those, the YouTube links to those, and we do record these and make these available if you don't have a chance to come live. But we're glad everybody could show up here today, and I think you're in for a real treat. We're going to just briefly start with the rules of the game. Rules of the game. How do you play a game to get the most out of the game, to win the game? That's what this is about. And you're going to give just 4 simple agreements here this morning, and these are you're going to make these agreements with yourself in your mind. The first agreement you're going to make is to own it. And in fact, today we're really focusing on that one. But what do I mean by owning it? I'm going to own my decisions. I'm going to live with my choices. I'm going to take responsibility and ownership and accountability for who I am and the results that I get, versus blaming other people and making excuses or just denying that there's a problem. Make that agreement with yourself right now that you're going to agree to own the content and what you hear today and what you do with it. Second, you're going to participate 100%. You're going to set your phone aside. You're going to really focus. You're going to pay attention. You're going to take some notes. And the most important part of participation is you're going to act on this. You're going to do something as a result of hearing it. Third, your agreement is to be humble, is to be open-minded, is not to come in saying, "Oh, I've heard all this before," because what you're doing there is you're just programming your brain and your mind to open up and to learn. So it's just being curious and being interested and not having a big I know. And then the final agreement that you want to make is to have some fun. And I'm going to start off with some fun by telling a little parable story to get us started. So, the introduction to living a proactive life. There once was a grasshopper who loved life. He spent his time lazing in the sun, eating what he wanted to eat, sleeping when he wanted to, generally enjoying himself all the time. And he kind of lived like he had no cares in the world. One day he was out there in the sun bathing and saw this ant pushing this breadcrumb across the ground, really working hard. And the grasshopper said, "Hey, brother, what are you doing?" And the ant replied, "I'm gathering food for the winter while the weather is still warm. And once the winter sets in, I'm going to stay home and just eat for my stock of food." The grasshopper, he made fun of the ant's dull life and went on sunbathing, saying, "There's enough time for such boring work. You should take time and have some fun like me." And so soon the summer passed and the winter started to set in. And as the weather became colder, it became harder for the grasshopper to get out. However, he started to feel hungry, so he decided to brave the weather and find some food. And when he stepped out, to his shock, everything was covered with snow, and he couldn't find anything to eat. And he continued to search every day for food unsuccessfully. He didn't find anything. And finally, he grew weak and he died. So there's our little story to help us understand proactivity. Obvious question: which of the two, the grasshopper or the ant, was the proactive one? And obviously, we know the answer. It's the ant. And so let's look at three characteristics from this story of a proactive person versus a reactive person. That's what we're looking at, is this distinction. Well, the ant knew himself. He was self-aware. He saw reality. He was tiny. He saw he needed to get some help from his teammates. And he knew with them doing this in the summer that was limited, there was nothing he really couldn't get done as long as he got some help and he stayed with it. He knew and recognized that there was a winter coming and it could be severe. And third, he knew what his resources were. He knew that he had teammates and he had some time to work on it. So how about the reactive grasshopper, or the non-proactive grasshopper? Well, he wasn't self-aware. He thought he was big, not like the ant. So, hey, what's the big deal? Well, I've got plenty of strength. I got plenty of size, and I don't need a team and I don't need anybody to help me out. And second, he didn't really think about the winter being severe. He didn't even think about the winter. He was having too much fun in the sun. And finally, he didn't know that he had limited resources. He hadn't really gathered a team. And he was not considering the fact that summer was going to leave and winter was going to come. So I know these are obvious things. I know these are straightforward things, but they are things that people do not consider. So let's look at some definitions here this morning. Proactive versus reactive. And again, I want you just to think this morning. That's what this is about, is engaging your mind. Proactive, simple definition, is acting in anticipation of future problems, needs, or changes. The fact is, the one thing that is consistent is change. Life changes. Our bodies change. Our minds change. Our workplace changes. Everything changes. There are always going to be needs and there are always going to be problems to solve. That's the nature of life. Proactive people act in thinking and anticipating those changes versus a reactive person who responds immediately to the present stimulus. In other words, they live for the day. Now, I'm all about getting the most out of a day and being very present. But no thought of the future, no thought of what's coming, no proactive thinking is a disaster. We've been given the God-given ability to think and to consider. We don't have to just live by the stimulus. We can make responses. We can be responsible. Reactive people are not responding. They are reacting to how they feel. So I hope you see the difference based on those definitions. There's some other distinctions here this morning that can really help us understand this whole concept. I always like to work on the mindset first and the thinking and then get real practical. We're certainly going to get practical here in a minute, but I want you to think some more with me. This first lesson or distinction comes from something called the donut. It comes from Stephen Covey's Seven Habits. Just look and picture in your mind a simple donut, two circles, two concentric circles. You get a donut hole and you've got the donut. Inside the bigger circle, which includes the smaller circle, you have the things that you're concerned about. And then in the center circle, you have what you have influence over, what you can actually control or do something about. If we're going to live in a proactive way, focus is so important. What am I going to focus my time and my energy on? It's going to be on the things that I can influence and the people that I can influence. I'm really not going to spend an inordinate amount of time and energy and resource on what I'm concerned about, but that I can't do anything about. And what's in the very center of the influence is myself. I'm going to spend a harder amount of my effort on myself versus just on other people and other things, because where I can make the biggest difference is who I'm being. So that is the distinction of influence versus concern. And proactive people get that. They're going to work on the things that they have influence over. Second, snow. When I say the word, you either get happy or you get a little scared or sad. I don't know how you feel about winter weather, but especially snow and ice. Most people would say probably not too good. But some people have a very warm emotional attachment to snow. It goes with Christmas time. It goes with time off school. It goes with sledding. It's something fun. The fact is, folks, is snow can create good feelings or bad feelings. It can create neither. It's frozen water. What is the point? Here's the point. Proactive people understand the distinction between living by objective thinking versus subjective feeling. The fact is that snow causes you to think something, which causes you to feel a way about it. The snow is not causing the good or the bad feelings. It's your thoughts that cause the way you feel. What I'm saying here is proactive people need to find their motive. What motivates you? Are you a feeling motivated person? Are you a thinking motivated person? Proactive people are motivated by their thinking, not by their feeling, because they know their feelings really come from their thinking. If you live by how you feel, you'll make some really bad choices sometimes. Sometimes you'll make a good choice, but proactive people stop and think and then choose. They're motivated more by their thoughts and their consideration than by how they feel. And the third distinction, which we're going to spend the most time on this morning, comes from the lesson of the tree. If I want apples, I need to plant apple seeds, which create an apple root, which produce apples. It's the root versus fruit. It's the lesson of consequence. Proactive people understand that there are consequences to their actions and their thoughts. They live understanding that if I plant one thing, I can expect a harvest from that thing. And if I plant something else, it would be foolish to expect a different result. I understand the relationship of root and fruit. I understand that what I think and do produces what I feel and what I have. Let me say that again. That what I think and do produces what I feel and what I have. The root inside of me creates the fruit outside of me. There is a consequence to my thinking and to my activity. It's how I feel and it's what I have. That's the lesson of the tree. And I want to spend a little more time on that third distinction of root and fruit so that you can really grasp how to become a more proactive person. So let's look at the tree. It comes from a formula of proactive living: be times do equals have. In other words, being, my thoughts and my principles times doing, my activity, my action, my calendar, create my result, which is what I have. That's the root, being and doing, and the fruit, what I have. So this is the common sense thing of proactivity. If I want to have a different result, I need to do something different. And to do something different, I need to be a different kind of person. Back to the donut, what can I work on? I can work on who I'm being and what I'm doing. That's where I have influence. So how do you do that, Dave? Well, let's talk about the root, the principles, the values, and the purpose. How clear are you on what's really important to you, on what matters to you, on what matters, on what kind of person you're going to be? Do you proactively take time to consider the kind of person you want to be? Do you live by principle or do you live by feeling? Do you live by truth? Do you live by self-evident truth, like how I treat other people is basically how they treat me? That's one self-evident truth. I always like Leaf U: love, encouragement, acceptance, forgiveness, and understanding. When I put that out, when I have that as my principle and my values, that's typically what I get back. And do you have purpose? Do you have clear service in your mind? It's all about being. As a coach, what I help people do is I help them define their roots. I help them get clear on who they really want to be based on what they want to do and what they want to have. Root, it's the bottom part of the tree. It's the part of the tree you don't see, but it's the part that creates everything else. Then the fruit. Another way to say that is beginning with the end in mind. Are you clear on what you really want to produce? People that want apples plant apple seeds and have apple root, so they have apple fruit. Here's the point. Proactive people take time to sit down and consider what they really want, what outcome they really want to have, so they can change who they're being and what they're doing to get that outcome. That's the importance of the fruit. This is a lot of words. I'm going to let some of that just kind of percolate there. I want you to look back through the notes on the page. Just slow things down and kind of connect all these dots, and then we'll move forward. I want to transition now into saying, well, Dave, this all sounds good. It makes sense to me. It's common sense. How do I start to become more proactive? I'm going to give you some do's. Here's what you need to do to be more proactive. I'm going to go by the calendar. Each year, you need to sit down with yourself and then maybe with your team and set direction by defining specific outcomes. Proactive people choose and then move. They choose their direction, and they choose to. It's like aiming an archer when he's going to aim at a target. He gets clear on what he wants to have by the end of the year and defines it. Second, each 90 days, this is just recommendation. How do I become more proactive, coach? Each year, you set a direction by defining some specific outcomes. Each quarter, you refocus on those outcomes and you commit to very important, not urgent milestones. In other words, every quarter, you're going to track your progress by setting clear things to accomplish that are in line with that target in that direction for the year. And it's being accountable for getting those most important things that are typically not urgent done. So are you accountable each quarter to some rocks? We call them rocks because they're the big things that are most important, that are going to lead you to what you want at the end of the year. So where do you go next on the calendar? Each week. How would you do that? Now, folks, this is a recommendation. This isn't like rules. These are tools. But weekly planning is a huge tool. Sit down every Sunday, first day of the week in the afternoon, and identify and clarify and commit to priorities for the week. In other words, not what are the 50,000 things I'm going to do next week. What are the 4 or 5 things next week that will lead me toward accomplishing that milestone that's in line with my goal for the year? I'm going to clarify and commit to those priorities. I'm just going to tell you a practical way to do a commitment. You put it on the calendar. And I don't think you fill a calendar up with 50 million things for the week. I think you pick out 4 or 5 very clear, defined actions and priorities, and you put those in and you let everything else in life work around those priorities. Some of those priorities are going to be repeated. They're going to be habits. Some of those priorities are going to be things that are in line with your rocks. Proactive people plan. And so that brings us down to the last move. Each day, what do proactive people do each day? Here's another suggestion on what you can do. Begin the day with energy and focus, not in a whirlwind of madness. In other words, I've got that weekly plan, so this is Tuesday. Which of those items am I going to do today on Tuesday? Because you know the week changes and things come and they go. But if I'm choosing each day the 1 or 2 things from that weekly plan and getting them done, and I'm beginning my day with habits of energy and focus like exercise, some healthy food, enough rest, then I am showing up with a being, with an energy, with a focus, with a presence. And then I end that day with reflection and a gratitude on how the day went. Folks, I'm just giving you proactive habits. You may want to do all that. You may want to do some of it, but I'm just saying you choose and you look at that and say, how am I doing there? How could some of that change help me? And don't be overwhelmed with it. Just look at those as tools. I've got a yearly tool, a quarterly tool, a weekly tool, a daily tool. How could I put one of those tools or hone one of those tools or sharpen one of those tools and be more proactive? That's the question I would be asking if I was on the receiving end of this today. So how do I get started? I get all this. You've talked to us for about 20, 25 minutes here. I want to do something. I'm just feel overwhelmed, Dave. I don't know how to get started. Well, here's where I would start. If you're asking Dave, well, Dave, how are you proactive? Where do you start? I think you need to start with some conversation with yourself and with your creator. I pray, and I want to get clear on my purpose. I want to get clear on my route, my principles, my values, and then my desired outcomes. I think we're such a busy society nowadays. People never, ever hardly slow down to get clarity. I think we do need to talk to ourselves. I think we need to quit listening to our feelings so much and start talking objective common sense to our minds and our heads, and certainly talk to our God and our creator about our life, because that's the person that really matters. And then second, it's this choice to be an owner and not a victim. To truly say, if it's to be, it's up to me, that I'm going to make some choices here that make sense. I'm going to quit letting life beat me up and other people and my thinking and my feelings. And I'm going to stand up and take a stand. And then I'm going to start doing some things proactively and quit just taking it on the chin all the time. And third, I'm going to get some help. Remember our grasshopper? He was wanting to do it all himself. He wasn't self-aware enough to say, we as human beings do better when we get some help. And people are too proud and I live in Appalachia. We all live in Appalachia. One of our things is this rugged independence. It sometimes works against us. It's good to seek help from others, people that can help you get clear, can help you take action, can give you some practical tools, some practical training, some practical direction. It's not, in fact, it's foolish to try to stand independently on your own and not reach out and get some help. So those are 3 ways to get started. Have a chat with yourself, talk and pray to your creator, choose to be an owner, and seek some help from other people that can help you get clear. Here are 3 questions to finish this off this morning for you to consider. And if you've got a pen or a pencil handy and you're able to do this, I think that would be the best way to finish this. What have you learned or been reminded of today? None of this stuff is new. This is just common sense, but it is certainly not common practice. What thing stood out to you today that you said, that one is something I need to do something about? There's something that I'm going to take some action. What specific actions will you take today? What have you learned or been reminded of that makes sense to you? And what action are you going to take today? I'd write it down. I think that's a commitment. I think that's an accountability. Write it down. And who are you going to reach out to for some help? I certainly stand ready to help anyone. I talk to everyone who emails me and says, I'd like to have a conversation. That's just what I do for life. That's my purpose. And I would love to have a conversation with you just to help you today with any of this. And in fact, here's what you can actually do. I'll send you this slide so you can review it. I'll send you some more articles. They're on my website. I pick 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 out that are with the topic, and I email those out to anybody who asks. And then finally, a conversation. Be glad to have that with you. There's my email address, Dave Beam at mentordavebeam.com. Just drop me a line. Say, Dave, I was on the program today. I really enjoyed it. I'd like to just talk to you about my situation. I'd like to get some clarity. I've got an issue I'd like to discuss. I'd like to run something by you. Love it. Love to do that for you. I'd love to do that with people. That's what gets me up in the morning, is going out to have conversations like that and helping people. So that brings us to our conclusion today. We were a little proactive in our planning, so we're about 3 minutes early. So I'm going to say goodbye and hope you had a great 30 minutes with me today and this was helpful. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.